Hey, thanks for listening to the UDRcast. If you appreciate the kind of in-depth conversation and insight into recovery, make sure to sign up as a member. Most of our members pitch in $5 or $10 a month, the price of a few coffees. To make this happen, you can sign up at the website at Billwardlife.
The UDRcast is not affiliated and does not represent any 12-step fellowship. I, Bill Ward, the host of the UDRcast, will be sharing my experience and my journey of recovery. That does include, but is not limited to, the literature contained in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps. Our guests will be sharing their own path to recovery and what has worked for them. The UDRcast encourages and supports all paths to recovery. Welcome everybody to the UDRcast. UDR stands for Uncover, Discover, and Recover. My name is Bill Ward, and I'm coming to you from the recovery capital of Canada, Calgary, Alberta. Here we are going to discuss everything recovery, different perspectives, different experiences, both with the people I know and with others from around the world. If you resonate with anything you've heard on this episode today, we ask that you share it with anyone who you think may benefit from it. If you have any questions or comments, please find us at billward.life and send us a message in the info section. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you are interested in more recovery content, you can find the buttons for the YouTube channel and other social media outlets on the homepage, and you will be redirected to those platforms. We can recover, one person, one family, one community at a time. Start with ego. When I first came into recovery, I didn't even, I thought I knew what ego meant. And I thought it was like an over-exuberant, aggressive type of thing. That's what I thought ego was. Really prideful and forward and aggressive kind of thing. And then, I come here and I start learning about certain aspects of the program, and I hear the word ego, and that's what I thought it was. And then I started learning about pride, and pride in the 12 and 12. It's kind of written here and there in a few different places. And so I was like, okay, well, pride is kind of what I was thinking that ego was. And then I hear about pride in reverse. And then I hear that pride in reverse and pride in the normal sense, and they're both the ego. And many things in between of those things are the ego as well. And then I was starting to kind of get confused. Well, what is really the ego here? And then I did my step work, and I kind of came out of that step 4 with the 4th column, and, looking at my part, the parts of my world that I've tried to control, the parts of the world that I've tried to manipulate to deliver me what I think I need or what other people need. And I'm kind of just like the actor, just trying to manipulate and pry and grab and push the world to deliver me and the people that I love, but mostly me, what it is that I think is going to make me and or them happy. And then I do my step 5, and I can kind of see the ego a little bit more, because my sponsor clarifies what the ego is a little bit more. And really the ego lies within, the root of our problem, selfish, self-centeredness. That is the ego. And I must be rid of that ego, or it's going to kill me. And so I fucking kind of keep going along this journey of recovery, and I keep learning some more about ego and pride and, self. And I'm just going to kind of fast forward. I heard a term at some point in recovery where the ego was EGO, edging God out. And I kind of like that. And then I learned more and more and more and more about step 6. And step 6 is really trying to identify the ego. And the ego to me today is anything that's based in fear and not based in love. So as I look at my step 6 work that I work in the 10, I'm constantly on the watch for the ego. Where am I selfish, dishonest, resentful, afraid? Where am I jealous? Where am I self-seeking? Where am I superior? Where am I? And what are the reasons why I'm these things? That's really the more important thing. So I watch for the ego, and I look at where the root of the ego, or the true nature, the exact nature of where it stems from. And when I first start here and we look at that step 5, the exact nature of our wrongs, we don't really see the exact nature of the wrongs that we're doing when we first get here. I think the nature, which means origin of, it comes through time. It comes through sticking around and being persistent and consistent with your commitment to change and keep looking and digging into yourself to see where these things are actually stemming from. And they always stem from the instincts. And I've been always trying to fill my instincts with the ego, with things from outside of myself. And as I kind of learned more about the big book, I got to the spot in the We Agnostics chapter where it says the fundamental idea of God is within every man, woman, and child. But it's often obscured by pomp and worship and calamity. So it's the pomp of self that I try to use to navigate the world, but it's always based in fear, so it's ego. And then the worship of whatever it is I'm worshiping, maybe it's money, maybe it's status, maybe it's women, maybe it's sex, maybe it's porn, maybe could be a number of different things that I worship. And when I say worship, I don't mean like the term worship, like when I came into recovery, I thought it was Christian-based or religious-based. I mean worship. Where do I spend most of my time thinking about and focusing on in my life? And I worshipped all of those things that I talked about. And when I really peel back the layers of those things that I talked about, I can see that I'm in a fear of not getting something that I think I really need or want to be happy and satisfied in the world. So then as I kind of keep moving through recovery, I start kind of looking at different aspects. And I notice in step 7, and I'm glad we're on that tonight, that it talked about the most profound result of all was our change in our attitude towards God. And there's many components of the step 7 that really talk about love or are alluding to love. And they're talking about that God is love. Just like that We Agnostics piece. And then in the 10, it talks about love and tolerance of others is our code. And I learned that tolerance doesn't really have the basis of tolerate. Tolerance is actually a loving principle where you really understand somebody. And you have acceptance for somebody who might be emotionally ill, spiritually sick, or frequently wrong. But you don't have judgment. You have some compassion and love for them. So then today when I look at ego, I'm like, okay, it means edging God out. It means the absence of love. And it means I'm making some type of decision in fear. And the other thing that I learned about this journey is I can often misconstrue the direction I'm going with the best of intention. And if I look at it in the loving way with the best of intention, I often blind myself to the motive of self-seeking, some type of manipulation, or I'm afraid of losing something. So I really kind of got to get out of the way of living my life with the best of intention and trying to self-will the principles into my affairs on a self-will basis and doing what I think God's will is. I need to really follow the directions and identify my will, which is always the ego, and then relinquish the ego and leave the results up to God. And the principle is almost always loving and kind. And not almost always, it always is. And I'm eliminating the ego out of my life. But the thing is, the ego is always trying to get something that I think that I want to keep me happy. So the hard part is relinquishing what I want and leaving the results up to God. And in essence, step 7 is the accumulated net product out of relinquishing the ego as much and as best as possible as I can through working serious step 6 practices seriously in my life, being willing to try repeatedly step 6 on all my faults, being honest and being willing and trying this shit at a high level. And oftentimes I'm not going to get what I want. I might have to not take that job. I might not have to be able to date that girl or whatever it is. And there's a lot of pain in that because I need to learn the lesson. And oftentimes I don't know what the lesson is. And the lesson usually doesn't reveal itself till down the road when I can look back and go, fuck, yeah, thank you, God, for pushing me this way. And I had to shed those tears back there and do what I had to do. And I'm so glad that I trusted in you, God. And as I look back and I see the track record of me really trusting and leaning on God in those hard times, I can navigate in more of a positive way, and I don't need to be bludgeoned and beaten into humility anymore. A desire to seek and do God's will. It can come from my voluntary reaching for it. And it becomes a working part of my mind, and I come to rely upon it. And it's just been a great journey. And it's not always like that though, right? There's always desires that oppose the grace of God. And there's some times where I got to go through the pain again. And sometimes those instincts that I'm trying to medicate and have been working on for years, sometimes they still have wounds that come up over time. And they still want what they want, and they're still trying to grab and snatch and pry and wrest satisfaction, happiness out of this world, if it only can get something from outside to fill itself. But it's illusion, it's a delusion, it's a lie. And sometimes I believe it, and for me to not get that, it's still painful. And that guilt and shame and grief are still coming up sometimes. But I found that I'm able to deal with the shit when the shit comes up, because if I'm not, the shit will deal with me. So the ego, man, that's what's cunning, baffling, and powerful. And it gets more tricky as we go along in recovery. It gets more sneaky. But if I'm willing to work alongside of what it's trying to do and work more hand in hand with God, then I figure it out, man. And I can become authentic in my decisions. I can become authentic in who I am, and I don't need to justify my life or my decisions with people because I've done enough inventory, and I don't look at the intention of what I'm doing. I look at the motive and I go, fuck yeah, that's love. That's love for me, and it's love for you. Although you might think that it's something different, the humility within the person is within the beholder. Humility is always within the beholder. It's not within the viewer. Although the viewer, if they know the person, they can see the humility. But often people that are acting in humility, they're often judged by working in the ego by people that are working in the ego. That's why the egos or the humility is always within the beholder. If I have a desire to seek and do God's will and do what God would want me to do and work with love, it doesn't matter what the outside world says. And that's a beautiful thing, because you can rest your head on the pillow at night. You can walk in whatever direction and know that you're on the right path. But you also got to be willing to keep an open mind and learn lessons as you go and admit that you might be wrong. Right? I've had to do a lot of admission that I'm wrong too. And recently as well. And try to practice forgiveness also, that it's not always easy when I think somebody's on the wrong track. So, beautiful, beautiful step, beautiful meeting. Thanks for sharing, and glad to see you guys all here. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the UDRcast. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. The viewpoints and the opinions expressed today were solely of the individual sharing them. If you resonated with this episode, please follow us and share this link with anyone that may benefit from it. Please visit us at Billwardlife to see everything that we have going on. We can recover, one person, one family, one community at a time.